welcome to Gavia Immer Gaming. This is Grant, and I'm back with another Warhammer Fantasy Battle Report. Today we're playing 2,000 points, and we rolled up the meeting engagement scenario. So we've got 2,000 points of my Dark Elves versus my opponent's High Elf army, and we decided to add also one free named character from your book. So just to add a little bit of flair to the game. In meeting engagement, you roll to see who's going to deploy their army first, and the High Elf army got the higher roll, so he rolled, and then you have to roll for each of your units plus any characters to see if any of them are held in reserve, and that happens on a roll of 1. In this case, the High Elf army didn't roll anyone, so the whole army was deployed. So we have from left to right his army, starting with a bolt thrower right at the top of the table. Beside that is a noble BSB on a griffin. Beside the griffin, just to the left of the tower that you see there, is a unit of 10 silver helms. And then behind the tower is a unit of Phoenix Guard, and in there is his free named character Teclis. Also Corhill is in there, and the standard bearer is carrying the banner of the World Dragon. We have beside that a unit of Spearmen, and then Caradrian on a Frost Phoenix. And then just to the far right hand side is a second bolt thrower. And I have to apologize, there's a few blurry pictures in here, but this is his right flank, the left side of the table from my point of view. And here's a close-up picture of his left flank. And I'll just take you through my army now, going from left to right on the screen. Unit of 5 Warlocks, and then beside that is a unit of 5 Dark Riders, and then a second unit of 5 Dark Riders. Behind the tower is a unit of Witches with a Cauldron who's got the Hag on top. She's also my BSB. In there is Helbron, and also my free named character Malekith. Beside them, just right to the left of the building, we have another unit of 5 Warlocks. And then just right at the edge of the table, on the right hand side of the screen, is a Dreadlord on Dark Pegasus, and he has the Cloak of Twilight and a Lance. And then at the back of the table is a Bolt Thrower, but it was held in reserve. So here's my right flank, and here's a picture of my left flank, and now you can see a little bit better the Dreadlord on the Dark Pegasus. And then behind his lines I have a unit of Shades that have scouted and are hopefully going to go after this Bolt Thrower. And here's just a picture of the whole table after Vanguard. I moved the Warlocks on the left hand side of the screen up a little bit, and also the Warlocks on the right hand side around to go in and go after his flanks or the Bolt Thrower if the Shades aren't able to take care of it. I wasn't able to roll a 6 to steal the first turn, so the High Elves go first. He charged his Frost Phoenix with Caradrian on top, and also that unit of Spearmen at the unit of Dark Riders who fled. The Phoenix caught them, and the Spearmen failed the charge. And then here's where you can see where the Spearmen ended up after their failed charge. The Noble BSB on the Griffin, just at the far left-hand side of the screen, charged the unit of Warlocks that are off the screen to the left. They fled, and the BSB chose to redirect and try to charge into the flank of the Dark Riders at the bottom of the screen, but he failed the charge. In the remainder of the movement phase, the Phoenix Guard went into the building. And so here's a picture of the left-hand side of the board after movement. You can see that unpainted unit of Warlocks, their position after the flee. And a picture of the right-hand side, and you can see where the Frost Phoenix ended up after running down the unit of Dark Riders. And in Magic, it was 11 dice to 7. He used 2 dice to cast Throne of Vines, and while I hate letting that go through, I decided to in this case. And then he also was able to get off the Comet, and that's indicated there by that red token in the middle of the board. He used his Bolt Thrower to take off one of the Warlocks. And with that, we move on to Dark Elf turn 1. The Witches failed their Frenzy check and were forced to charge into the building. Didn't quite move them up all the way because I didn't want to go over top of the token from the Comet. So that's where they're sitting there, but they're actually charged into the building. The Shades at the top of the screen actually failed their charge into the Bolt Thrower, but the Warlocks were able to make it in. So there's a picture of that completed charge. And then at the very top of the table, the Dreadlord flew over to go after the other bolt thrower. Also, the Warlocks were able to rally. And so here's a picture of the board after Dark Elf turn 1 movement. The Comet went off at the beginning of the magic phase, but it was only able to kill 1 witch. They get their 5-up ward save from the Cauldron plus magic resistance 2 from Malekith, so ended up with a 3-up ward save versus that magic spell. The Comet also did kill 1 Silver Helm and 2 Phoenix Guard in the building despite their 2-up ward save, so actually worked out well in my favor. And after the magic spell went off, I was able to move the witches in to their proper position. For the remainder of magic, Malekith cast Word of Pain off on the Phoenix Guard, but Teclis used his Scroll of Hoth to dispel that and actually caused Malekith to lose that spell for the remainder of the game. In shooting from the Warlocks at the top right-hand side, they were able to kill 1 Spearman, but that is all. In close combat, the witches were able to kill Core Hill plus 6 of the other Phoenix Guard and only took 3 wounds in return. So they won the combat, but being in the building, the High Elves were stubborn and passed their test, so the witches just pushed back. And then at the top of the screen, the Warlocks killed the Bolt Thrower, but did lose 1 coming back, and they just reformed to face the rest of the table. And so there you have a view of the board after turn 1. In High Elf turn 2, he charged his Spearmen into the flank of the witches, and also the Noble BSB went into the front of the witches. And in the rest of the movement, the Silver Helms moved up to threaten the Warlock. There's a picture of the charge from the Noble into the front of the witches. And here's a picture of the right-hand side of the board after High Elf turn 2 movement. You can see the Phoenix, the Frost Phoenix, moved over behind the Warlocks and the Dark Riders. And there's a view of the left-hand side. In Magic, he was able to cast Doom and Darkness on the witches, giving them -1 strength and -1 toughness. And in close combat, Helbron issued a challenge, which was accepted by the Noble BSB. Helbron was able to kill the Griffin and made 3 5-up ward saves and only took 1 wound in return. In the rest of the combat, despite the -1 strength and toughness, the witches were still able to pull it out, winning by 1, but both units of the High Elves stick. So in Dark Elf turn 2, I charged the Dark Riders into the rear of the spears, and I charged the Warlocks into the Silver Helms to negate their lance bonus. And finally, a charge from the Dreadlord on the Dark Pegasus into the Bolt Thrower. I moved the Warlocks on the right-hand side out of the charge arc of the Frost Phoenix. I was hoping that those shades could form as a little bit of bait to get the Frost Phoenix to charge in there. The shades have great weapons. I thought they would have a good chance against the monster, so I moved them up a little bit just to lure in the Frost Phoenix. And there you have a view of the board after Dark Elf turn 2 movement. In this combat, there was a couple of wounds on either side. Don't remember exactly. It looks like 2 wounds each, but looks like the High Elf army stuck. No such luck with the battle with the witches. Helbron was able to kill the BSB in the remainder of the challenge, and then the Spearmen took a number of wounds. They ran, and the Frenzied Witches had to pursue. I decided to pursue with the Warlocks as well, and the Warlocks were able to catch the Spearmen. And we didn't even roll for this. He just picked up the Bolt Thrower, assuming that the Dreadlord would be able to finish the two Bolt Thrower crewmen off. In High Elf turn 3 movement, the Phoenix did indeed charge into the Shades, so that part of my plan worked. We'll see how well, but it actually... So there's that. In Magic, he got Wisdoms off on the Silver Helms, giving them +1 strength and toughness. But despite that, this close combat is a tie again. And unfortunately, the Always Strikes First is negated by the Always Strikes Last of the great weapons on the Shades. which is normally fine, but when you're going up against another elf army that has always strikes first, the Shades actually obviously didn't fare too well. There was only one left to actually attack the Frost Phoenix. Did get one wound through, but they fled and were able to get away. Phoenix chose to pursue here, which was probably a mistake, seeing as that last remaining Shade would need double ones to rally, but I think my opponent forgot about that and decided to pursue, which brought the Phoenix really out of play for a couple of turns. So in Dark Elf turn 3 movement, I have no charges. I did fly my Dreadlord up to put him in position to go after the Silver Helms in my next turn, and I then reform the Witches, turn them around to try to assault the building. So there you have the position of the Witches after they've reformed. Move the Dark Riders and the Warlocks over as well to provide some support to do something against those Phoenix Guard. Magic and shooting was nothing eventful. In the close combat, the Warlocks were able to win by 1, but the Silver Helms stick around. So we move on to High Elf turn 4. The Phoenix Guard moved out of the building to use the building as a shield to provide them some safety from the Witches. And the Frost Phoenix moved up to provide some sort of problem for the 2 fast cav units. And this is maybe where chasing after that last remaining Shade was a mistake. If he had just reformed, he probably would have been able to charge one of these units instead of just flying over. In close combat, this was actually a very funny part of the evening. The Silver Helms did 3 wounds on my Warlocks, and my 5-year-old son came over and asked if he could do some rolling for me. So I handed him the 3 dice and I said, "Sure, roll 3 6s for armor saves," and he rolled 3 6s. So they didn't even need their ward save. The combat was a push. Dark Elf turn 4, the Dreadlord charged into the rear of the Silver Helms. And then I lost a couple pictures here. They were kind of blurry, but in that close combat, the Silver Helms pretty much decimated. There was 1 remaining, and I chose to restrain, knowing that they would need double ones, and so they fled, but we just reformed. So there's the position of the units after the flee and the reform. And in the rest of movement, you can see the Witches just sort of moved around to try to get in a possible charge on the Phoenix Guard. And I moved the other 2 fast cav units, the Dark Riders and the Warlocks, back behind the building. In High Elf turn 5, he charged his Frost Phoenix at the Dark Riders who fled. He redirected into the Warlocks who fled, and he ended up failing that charge. And then he moved his Phoenix Guard back into the building, which unfortunately was just out of the charge arc of the Witches. So he's doing a good job hiding from those Witches, not able to get them into close combat. With magic, he cast Searing Doom, which is a metal spell on my Dreadlord, who has a 1-up armor save. I took 2 wounds despite his 3-up ward save from the cloak, which provides him with the ward save versus magic. So took a lot of wounds, was able to save all but 2, which gives him only 1 wound remaining. So in Dark Elf turn 5, I flew that Dreadlord back behind a building, protecting him from a future Searing Doom in High Elf turn 6, playing my own little version of Chicken, protecting those points. I then rallied my fast cav 2 fast cav units that had fled from the Phoenix, and then the other fast cav Warlocks, those 2 unpainted models, I moved them back behind the building, thinking that the Phoenix Guard were just going to do the same thing they did last time and move out of the building directly opposite of the Witches. So moving those 2 Warlocks in that position prevented that from happening, hopefully allowing me to get a charge with those Witches to go after the Phoenix Guard. So here's a picture of the upcoming showdown between the 2 large units, the bulk of the points between my Witches and his Phoenix Guard. And here's the big letdown. So instead of being able to charge the Phoenix Guard with my Witches in the building, he actually moved his Frost Phoenix up to prevent a charge on the witches, on the Phoenix Guard. So now my only option with those witches is to go into the Frost Phoenix. So in Dark Elf turn 6, that's what I do. I charge my witches into his Frost Phoenix, and I also charge the 2 warlocks that were in the back of the building into the flank. In the close combat phase, he was able to kill the 2 warlocks and also 4 witches, and he ended up with 1 wound left on his Frost Phoenix, but he made his break check and stuck. And that's the game. Somewhat anticlimactic there at the end, since neither army could do much to the main forces of the other. He wasn't able to finish off the witches. I wasn't able to get the witches into the Phoenix Guard. So got a few of his characters, which was great. Gave me some points. I got his 2 bolt throwers, and ended up winning by around 600 points. It was really quite interesting adding in those name characters. They're so, I think, overpriced that you typically don't play them, but they do add some neat rules, some really powerful rules, obviously, different twist, and the combination of the witches with Malekith giving them the 3-up magic resistance ward save with Helbron in there. That's just a vicious, deadly unit, very hard to deal with, especially with very limited shooting. So it was a great game, had a great time, and we look forward to 9th edition.